have a friend, who says, oh, you should really read this book, I think you would like this book, you may go pick it up. In fact, I had never read a series of Unfortunate Events when I was a kid. The first one had just come out, and I had a friend who read it, and he was like, Gabe, this book is awesome. You need to go in and you need to read it. Like, I really think you would like it. So I read that book, and I loved it. So recommendations from friends or classmates is another way. Like, you guys know what you like to read, so you share that with each other. Go ahead, Clay.
I was wanting to say you can find the information at the back of the book cover, because it tells what the story is about, what the character may do, what their problem is. If it's a chapter book or even a regular book, you can find information on the back of a book.
Yep. So the back of the book, sometimes we read that little like blurb on the back of the book, right? And I did spell recommendations wrong. I just fixed it. So that little blurb on the back of the book that just like tells a little bit about the story, we use that too. So I'm going to write down the back cover, right? Or the back of the book. So I'm going to write back cover blurb. Okay, so the back cover blurb. I know that's a little funny word, but that's what it means. It just gives you a little bit about the book to help you decide maybe this is a book I want to read. So I think we've got a kind of an idea on how we pick good books, but let's move forward. I want to highlight one of them, right? Recommendations is one of the best ways we find books to read because we know what each other are interested in. We have friendships with people and we know what they would like. And so what's a system? I want to really try to develop a system. It's virtually, but like, what could we do virtually to try to set up a system where we could recommend books to each other? Does anybody have any idea on what we could do to make sure how we could share or have a system where we could say, hey, this book's really good. I think I would like to recommend it to my classmates. Anything we could do online that would maybe we could figure that one out. Anybody willing to share? Michael, go ahead. Thank you for being brave.
Share notes in the chat box.
Okay, so we can do it in the chat box. So share books in the chat box. So we should set up maybe a time for that, right? So share books in the chat box. So maybe we could dedicate like the last 2 minutes of reading lessons, right? Where you could say, hey, these are the books I think people would like. That's a good idea, right? Especially with us going off to read books on Epic. Maybe you could see that, oh, hey, these are books people have liked. Anybody else have another idea where we could do it? Thank you, Michael, for being a risk taker and sharing that idea. Anybody? Somebody else. Come on, y'all. We got to have more ideas than just sharing it in the chat box. There got to be more ideas in the heads of 22 fourth grade students. Going once. Okay.
I'm doing Zoom your seat.
Go ahead. Who said that? Oh, okay. I'm going to throw out this idea. You could make recommendations during small group, right? So maybe you just share with your small group, hey guys, I think you guys would really like this. And you should give it a chance and try to read it. Does anybody raise your hand if you know what Google Docs are? You've used them before where you have like a Google document that people can get on and edit. So maybe we could create a class Google Doc where you could go on after you read a book if you thought it was a good one and you could type in the name of the books. And people could see that, the name of the books on the class Google Doc. I can create that this weekend and send it out. I'd say this is a lot easier, right, when we're here in person. So like last year, my class decided on two things. We had one spot on the whiteboard in our classroom where people could just go write good books that they were reading and people could look at the whiteboard. And then we had another spot on our bookshelf where after you finished reading, if you thought it was a book other people would like, you could put it on that section and it said like classroom or classmate recommendations. It's a little harder online, obviously, right? So those are the three ideas we're going to come up with. We're going to take a vote on which one we think is the easiest or which one we would like to do the best, because the problem is when we try to do them all at once, it runs into a whole thing of everyone's trying too hard to do different things and it gets confusing. So those are your three options. We're going to pick one of those as a class and we're going to kind of use it for recommendations. So in a second, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand for your vote. So the first option would be not yet, would be share books in the chat box in the last 2 minutes of reading. Second option would be make recommendations in small group. And the third one would be making a class Google Doc where you could type in different book recommendations, okay? So we're gonna tally votes. Raise your hand if you would prefer to just recommend books during the last 2 minutes, like in the chat box. Just type in recommendations in the chat box to your classmates. Raise your hand if that's what you would like to do. 2, I think, 3. Okay, hands down. Raise your hands if you would like to take, if you would like to make recommendations when you meet with your small group. Just talk to your small group about what you've been reading and what you like. Okay, hands down. And raise your hand if you would like to create a class Google Doc. Class Google Doc where we put where we can type in the names of the books that we enjoy reading and people can go onto the class Google Doc. Okay, so it sounds like it looks like based on the most votes, we're gonna talk about, and I'll give you guys time in small group to make book recommendations. I do want to share, excuse me. I do want to share that we may still every once in a while say, hey, at the chat box, because I do think that's an easy way. That was a good idea that Michael gave us, where you can just find some books, and that way you can hear from people outside of your small group. But one of the things I think that's good about doing it with a small group is the books you're reading are at your reading level, and so is the rest of your group. And so you can give those recommendations to each other, and everybody should be pretty comfortable reading those books. So we'll do the small group. I'll give you time to talk about books you've liked and what you would recommend, but we'll also maybe do it in the chat box every once in a while. All right. Sounds good. Thanks. All right. I'm going to go back to our thing. We're almost done. I'm going to get you out and reading today. We're going to skip that. Okay. So today, before you sign off to do your work, okay, before you sign off to do it, I'm going to have you put your name in the chat box. It just says, I'm committed to helping people get books, find books, and get these things done. Okay, so I'm going to have you put your name. You're just going to type your name. That's going to be your exit ticket to go meet for reading. I also want to tell you one more thing before I'll come back to this in a second. But today, you need to keep reading your book. If you're meeting in small group right away at 9:10, great. If you're at 9:40, you can get on at 9:40. You need to jot down notes and then either record yourself talking about those notes or put a picture or type them in the thing. We are grading your notes today. Okay, so whether you type them in or whether you take a picture or whether you talk about them in a video, you are getting a grade for showing that you've been reading and taking notes today. So it is your job to do that and show you are taking notes and reading your books. Okay, I'm going to show you the document one more time. Wathiq, I think Dunya knows how to get to it, but if you go into my Canvas page, there is a way to, she